Yeah,
We're
now we are.
already live, but just make sure I got it up on Facebook. Ah, yes, perfect. Thank you for recording. All right, showing we're live here. Just bear with me. Give me a moment. Couple clicks. All right, then I come back to here. Hi, everyone. So we titled this at Sister Alicia's request, Cosmic Disclosure, and of course it is. And the I believe 2 days ago or three perhaps, I saw Alicia, which is a dear sister on this ascension journey as well with us. Uh, I was divinely instructed to watch most of, I think, a 2 hour live that she did. And what I need to say is, I am mostly busy all the time, that I do not take time to watch lengthy lives and YouTubes and all of this because of what I do. However, in this case, I was divinely instructed to watch this. And I have known of Alicia's background story to some extent. However, it was very beautiful to listen to it more in depth and to the extents of it. And upon listening to it, because I was divinely guided to, it is directly connected with the children and with the moms, with this common theme at this time. But the awakening children, the awakened moms, and all of the beautiful love bond with this. And more importantly, I would say it's all important, of course, but the protection of that innocence of the children and maintaining the bond between the mother and the child is so important as well. So I thank you so much, Sister Alicia, for joining us and agreeing with this. And of course, you, Eduardo, brother, and River too, and all of the fur babies and the praying mantis creatures, I believe, that may be there too. And of course, Sister, yeah, hey, brother.
Hola.
Good stuff. All right, so we'd love to we need to begin with the mother, with Alicia. So as we go, and then we'll lead into the child, of course, because everything begins with the mother, which is so important. And what I call and what I say is uh, the major creator in this reality. Everything comes through the mother's birth here. So it's a very important creational role, if you will, and not to be diminished at all, and especially the bond between the mother and the child. So with this, without Rick rambling on, uh, may I ask for you to begin with your story, and we'll keep it, quite short, if you will, perhaps 10 minutes or so. But we should begin. You got called to divine service, if you will, is what I got here. So may you begin, like, what was your life like before you got called? And I love this part of the story.
Oof. Yeah, it's so great to be here. Thank you. Um,
You're welcome.
yeah, let me take you a little bit back. I have four children. I'm not with my older three. They live in Austin, Texas now. Quite an unexpected part of the divine plan for me. Um, yeah, I would say that I had no idea about all this spiritual stuff. I grew up in a Christian background, and I remember I started reading some Wayne Dyer books, And he was helping me kind of break through some chains, I think, of an old way of looking at God. And he ended up dying on my oldest son's birthday, Lawson. He's 18 now. But on August 29th, Wayne Dyer crosses over, and I find out I'm pregnant a month later. And then I get my scheduled due date. And there's something here about my experiences with the medical system throughout all of my pregnancies. But yeah, I get my date for the due date. It's May 10th, 2016, which happened to be Wayne Dyer's birthday. And so Wayne Dyer just died, and now I'm finding out I'm having a child on his birthday. And as I'm laying there on the table, now I'd say before I went down to have this surgery, I was just a American dream girl making it happen. I was making $20,000 a month. I was happily devoted and married to my husband, traveling the world. Uh, yeah, just thought I was living the dream. And so as I was laying on the table there, my body started to shake and have convulsions. And I remember the anesthesia woman, she said, I don't know what it is about this last batch of meds, but and then she just puts more of it in my spine and I start having these seizures. I ask her if this is normal, as much as I could speak, as my body's violently shaking. And and I hear her screaming, get that baby out of her. And this is an emergency. And you hear all these sirens and loudspeakers, and I don't know what's going on. So they don't really treat me as a patient anymore. They're just concerned about the mom is dying, get the child out. They intubate me, they put a towel over my head. And the next thing you know, I peacefully say, well, it looks like I'm dying now, and I'm going to leave my 3 children to my husband. And I felt the presence of Wayne Dyer actually there. And so slowly I faded away. And I don't know how long I was gone, and I don't know if medically they put me under in any sort of way or if this just naturally happened. Eventually, hours later, I wake up in a machine and they're wanting to put me in the ICU. And then I hear everybody cheering and crying. Oh my gosh, she's fine. And so they thought that I had had a brain bleed and an aneurysm and that I would be brain dead. And so as I came to, I wondered, do I have legs? Did I have a child? Is it a boy? Is it a girl? You know, and I named my son Dyer, and that was 9 years ago. And it's so interesting because you would think you would carry a lot of trauma from an experience or an event like that, but it was almost like, yeah, now I understand looking back, but I didn't know that then. I had died and been reborn. I was 33 years old as well. And I had a whole new idea of what incarnation actually meant, reincarnation. I now understand that my highest essence of myself incarnated into my body, and it didn't need to die for me to ascend, for me to become the highest version of myself. I didn't have a lot of spiritual contacts back then. So then I'm coming home to my 4,000 square foot home and all of my fancy life and my $20,000 a month business, and none of it made sense anymore, almost immediately. And I started to tell my husband, I don't want to live this life anymore. Great job. It was like, now looking back, it was like I had a Palladian consciousness or divine mother consciousness coming into Alisha's body and looking around through her eyes and being like, all right, you did a great job, but now it's on to the next plan. And so that was the beginning of me starting to learn how to dematerialize. And so we surely just, we sold everything. We downsized, we shifted our lifestyle and the way we live. We wanted to work less and be around family more, started to eat more clean. I went vegetarian almost immediately, and I never would have thought I'd do something like that. I used to judge that type of stuff. I used to judge anti-vaxxers and vegetarians a lot before I became one. And then and yeah, so that was the beginning. And then my husband and I, we decided to travel to Costa Rica for 2 months. And we thought we were just going to get the kids immersed in some culture and enjoy our time and go to this eco village. And from there, we decided that we wanted to sell everything and move here. And in between that, shortly after that, there was a post in the group of this eco village, which if you ever watch Netflix, you can look up La Eco Villa. And Zac Efron came to the community and they did all of this. That's a part of the agenda, anything that goes through Netflix, actually. Now I understand looking back what was going on, but I didn't know then. I just thought, oh, cool, we're in this community and Netflix is coming here and they're going to the private island, Punta Mona, and like they're showing that, this man that runs all these places, his name is Stephen Brooks. He's pretty famous in Costa Rica for music festivals and Punta Mona and La Ecovia and all of this. And so, yeah, we're thinking we're just ready to live the new earth. And shortly after I get there, I get a post that someone is in the neighborhood offering energy work and Thai massage body work. And my mom and dad happened to be visiting because I had flown them in. I called my mom and I was like, this was back in the day when I had money and I could do whatever I wanted. Mom, I want you, I think we're going to move to Costa Rica. I want to fly you in so you can come check it out with us. And, it sounds crazy. And so my mom and dad are there and this man named Eduardo walks in. And he gives my husband a massage. He gives my mom a massage. And he's too tired to do the next one for me. So he says he'll come back tomorrow for me. And so I've got my frankincense burning and I sit across from him and I put my hands in the prayer position and I look him in the eyes. And well, um,
And this is where it's significant, where that first activation occurred with the light body. Yes.
yeah, it was like, and I didn't have context to put to it. And I'm glad I didn't because now looking back, I understand that the twin flame evolution has been kind of hijacked a bit, just to be honest. And so I didn't know what that was. I just knew that it was like
Saw his
a
soul, and
celestial
that was the
reunion.
recognition.
It
Yes.
was a celestial reunion and our auras merged at that moment. And and then from there it was like he didn't really speak English at the time. He didn't we I did not communicate to him what was going on within me. Eventually I was Googling things like uh met a person you feel like you've known your whole life, or feel like I'm having an orgasm for 2 weeks. What's wrong with me? And that's when I learned about Kundalini. And and literally that's what it was. It was this constant state of an orgasmic energy coming through me. It was like my whole system, this technology was being turned on. And so I started to look up like things about twin flames and all of this came up and it sounded so dramatic. I was like, well, that's not me. I've got a beautiful 14-year
There's a lot
relationship.
of
It's not dramatic.
yeah, there's a lot of falsities out there and things taken astray with the core of what it actually is indeed. And
Yeah,
however, please continue.
yeah. And when I saw that, I was like, well, I'm not leaving something good for that, like I already have something so beautiful because I do believe in my last lifetime while in this physical body. And that's how I look at it. It was a whole nother lifetime that my husband at that time was my divine love. He was truly my soulmate. But this was something so far, so much deeper. And I think, that's what I had been called to do at some point was to make a sacrifice. And so it's easy to sacrifice something that's not worth that's worth sacrificing, but I had to sacrifice something so beautiful and something so pure. And and so, I went through the course of all the things in my body and finally within 5 days, like, and I was just judging myself and so felt so much guilt and shame, like, why am I feeling this for another person? And finally I just knew, and I would recommend this to anyone. I just believe in transparency. And I knew I couldn't hide this. And I knew I just went to my husband and I told him, I was like, babe, this is gonna fuck you up, but I'm feeling feelings for another man and I don't know what to do about it. And it's interesting because I'd met a woman in the community And she told me, "Why do you feel like you have to choose?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "Well, me and my partner are in an open relationship. We're in a poly relationship, and you can just have both or whatever." And I was like, that was so new to me. I'd heard of these things like far, far away, but never in my face. And I had my own judgments around that for sure. And so I went back to my husband and I told him, "What do you think about this?" And he was obviously in a position where he didn't know what to do, nor did I. And I was just trying to make all these feelings go away. And I brought it up to Eduardo, and he said, "I've been celibate for many years, waiting for my cosmic love. And that was just what I needed, was the honor and integrity of the man to rise that up." And there's so much going on right now in the communities about these open relationships, and everyone's getting hijacked in the sexual energy. And so I let nature take its course, and the gene keys and human design came into my life, which was a really big part of allowing this to happen naturally as it was meant to. And so over the course of 6 months, we consciously uncoupled, my husband and I, and he processed the divorce. He flew back to Texas and he did it, and he came back, and we had a family home together with me and him and the children. And then I had a space with Eduardo separate, but Eduardo became a part of our family. And actually, at the time, my husband David, I'd introduced him to a new partner in his life from England. They'd went to Glastonbury tour, and she's in the light worker community as well. And so it allowed things to transition just as they should have. And we just kept things very honest, open, and transparent. And then from there, of course, I had to deal with all of the things that you have to deal with when you're the bad guy, because I look like the bad guy for breaking apart my family and for choosing myself. And I'm feeling selfish and I'm feeling guilty. And I've always prided myself on providing a beautiful home for my family, a beautiful, stable home. And so, yeah, that was my initiation into Costa Rica. And then from there, or what I call Costa Rica. I call Costa Rica, if you put it
Oh,
all as one word, it says star in the middle.
if I may, at this point, Alicia, may I ask, during right up until this point right now, had you had any divine connection, let's say with Source, with Mother, Father, God, or any of divinity, or was it just you bringing in a higher divine aspect of yourself up until this time?
Yeah, it was looking back at it now, I can only describe this as an incarnation of a divine mother type of energy within myself. I I could not understand trauma. I could not understand the idea of needing to be healed. I was trying to open my mind to the compassion of it as I was coming around like healing circles and different things like that. And everyone was talking about their healing, and it felt like it'd been happening forever. And I was like wondering, what are we missing here? Why are we all not healed? What is it that, so the context of those things. So I will say I've always been connected to the Christ. I went to church in my high school days and definitely had that Shekinah fire, and but left it all behind when I got curious about dating and all of those things. It's like you can't have God and men at the same time. There's such a sexual trauma around religion, actually. So it's all by design. And now I understand, even in the church, when they would say, "Wait until the one to get married," kind of thing. I understand what that means now. But truly, it felt like um, I had become one with the source directly, and therefore I must meet the other of myself that has become one with the source as well. And so it was nothing but
Mhm.
God making love to God, and nothing but the most pure, beautiful love that we could have on the mental, emotional, and physical level. I think it was so supernatural. Me and Eduardo were both just like, "What is this? Who are you? Who am I? Is this our job? Are we?" And it was just like, bring heaven to earth with this love, bring heaven to earth with this love. And that's what we
So
were hoping.
beautiful. So with Eduardo, he was also feeling it. So he let you know what he was feeling with the energy as well. So it was absolutely mutual. with the energies, what both of you were feeling. And in the beginning, let's say it was unknown. Is it right to say that it was unknown also for Eduardo, or did he have some pre-knowledge, pre-education on what was transpiring with this important divine cosmic energy?
Yeah. I think he knew before he came here and never really forgot. And he told me one time he was praying for his cosmic love to return to him at the ocean, and he was visited by dolphins, and so that he knew that it would be soon. But when he met me, I'm a married woman with three children. So when I finally tell him, I can barely talk, I'm having so much energy. And I was like, do you, can you feel this? And he was like, yes, but you are a married woman. And I was like, I know. And I just started to cry. And he had invited my husband and I to go to a meeting. My partner Eduardo has practiced the Tao for many years and would practice in a kind of a secret Tao temple here in Costa Rica, and had made many vows. When I met him, he told me he worked for Kuan Yin and Maitreya. I'd never even heard of either Kuan Yin or Maitreya, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, and now I know a lot about them. But we went to this meeting with the Tao, and my husband decided not to go at the last minute, and they had a translator there for me, and we stand up and we greet all the four directions, and then they start speaking in Spanish and translating, and they were talking about the coming of the white age. They said that they'd gone through the green age, they'd gone through, and I would say the Tao, you could say, is like the original dragon family, is the way that I would really feel this energy. It's like this ancient dragon energy. But he said we were going from the green age to the red age, and we were in the pink age, transitioning from the red to the white. And I'd never heard any of these things, but I just had the tears of the mother rolling out of my eyes, like a soul recognition and a remembrance. And that's really, all of this was like an unfolding of a book. It just started to happen so quickly, and it all just started to orchestrate itself and unfold. And that's a whole nother story about Atlantean technology that I believe is here, original technology that's here in these lands, waters, and mountains. And that's why many people are feeling the call to come to this location, which I call it the heart of the Americas. It's just right there between the North and the South, and that small little center space. It's the bridge for sure between the head and the heart when you look at the North, Central, and South America lands. So yeah, it was a shock, and thankfully I had the support to go through the transition. And thankfully my family stayed. My ex-husband stayed for years until the quarantine came, until COVID came. And then he started to feel a little bit nervous about that, feeling like he needed to go back to his homeland. And I was like, what? I brought us here for a purpose. I'm protecting us from what's about to happen. And now I realize how psychic I've always been in my life, but I'd never been able to put context to the understanding of my true abilities. I just thought everybody saw and knew everything like I did. And so eventually, though, so I'm sitting there with this tough news that David wants to go back to the US, and I'm like, shit, what do I do? Am I going to go back with my kids, or am I going to stay here, or will some of my children stay here? And the next thing you know, I find out I'm pregnant with River. And so, the River had told me that I would have a child named River. And I told the River, there's no way. I've already had three children. I almost died having my last one. I can't imagine having another child. I just went through a divorce. And sure enough, I find out that I'm expecting her. And it was like we'd been holding heaven. We had ascended to heaven. I could say we were in the permanent level of bliss, ecstasy. I thought heaven was here for me and it was here for everyone. I was trying to understand why it hadn't fully formulated itself outside my eyes as it had
So
within myself.
I wish to interrupt because this is so important, and I'm going to ask kind of a personal question with this,
Mhm.
if you wish to oblige and answer. And my question is, when River was conceived, and you would know that being the mother, more or less, when it occurred, was there any profound other energetic experience? Did River Soul come in at the moment of conception, or what occurred with this. So let's just say you're in intimacy when River is conceived. What is the energetics during that time of intimacy with the conception? If you have anything there to offer on that. And just before you answer that, because this is so important, what River is born out of the cosmic divine energies of the masculine and the feminine. So this makes River very extremely special and important. So if you may, if you feel to give us some around that, it is important, not it's important for everyone watching, and it's also important for the future and for this now, because it's showing the importance of these children being born today. But not only that, because of these children being so special, it is also, let's say, why the darkness over the years with trafficking and child sex trafficking, all of the abuse and all of that is occurring also because of these children. They're very gifted, they're very special, and also for decades now, especially when any child was born in the US, one thing that they do when they take that pinprick for to get the blood, one thing they are looking for is the crystalline component being more active in the plasma of the blood to identify these crystalline children that have been coming in more so since 2012 linear year, but it began much before that, early around 2003, I believe, is what I'm receiving. So I just, if you may oblige, I'd love to hear a little bit with this energy because it's educational for others as well, because this is a very sacred, divine union between you two, and the result is river of that beautiful, divine creational energy. Thank you.
Yeah, she is the manifestation of the most pure love I could ever imagine that I read about in the books that have surfaced, or the stories that dare to try to tell the story of the Christ and Mary Magdalene. And so yeah, she was the representation of that, born of no karma. And the whole the whole thing was orgasmic. And I'll tell you what happened on that particular day she was conceived. It was not in my mind intentional, but I can recall the exact day. And what's so interesting is I'm a timekeeper. So if anyone follows me on Facebook, they know that I talk all the time about the dream spell and the Mayan Zolkin. And River was conceived on, as I'm doing an interview, just so you know, on kin number one, the start of a new cycle. And so what's so crazy about that is that, the interesting thing about grid work is that you're doing it whether you know it or not. But then when you really know you're doing it, you're packing with all your technologies and you're going in these churches and you're just cleaning shit up and you're burning the sage and like whatever. But in this particular day, it was right before they'd closed down the roads where you couldn't drive anymore. It would have been March 2020. And they were just about to plan to close everything down. And anyways, we were driving in an old town where Eduardo grew up. And the next thing you know, I just stopped my car in front of this church. And it had these like angelic beings on the top with swords on them. And I was like, wow, you don't normally see that image of an angel with a sword on a church, but I like it. And so then later, Eduardo tells me, this is the church of my family. This is where my father, my grandmother, and like, I didn't even know that story. And I just landed here and I was like, we've got to go in here. And so we were doing grid work that whole day. We just had so many 144 signs, so many, like, there'd be a picture of the Christ on the back of the bus with the sun. And it was just like, we knew we were unlocking the Christos mission. And so, yeah, I ended up finding out I was pregnant a month later. And It's interesting because people talk about orgasmic birth. And let me tell you this, I believe one of the problems with our earth today is that so many children have been born not out of love. Most people have not even had an orgasm in the moment of their conception. And then we're throwing our children into educational systems and hospital systems from the minute we have them because we've got to work in order to have these kids. And so it's like so interesting how the system works. And I had to live it in the old world so that I could know what it was like now. And so some people talk about the idea of orgasmic birth. And for us, Eduardo's just always been of the utmost service. I've never been with someone who believes in honoring a woman so much. And he's just the most humble, serving person that I've ever met in my life. It's my honor to receive such love from a man. And our job was to make orgasmic love our entire pregnancy. That is what River felt in the womb all day, every day. Not a day went by that it wasn't like that. And when River was conceived, that really was the next level to my galactic consciousness. I had picked up quite a bit up until that point, but it was really when I started studying a lot about the cosmic history chronicles and Maldek and Mars and just different cosmic and galactic histories. And so yeah, I talk a lot now about the idea of preventative trauma for children, which has a lot more to do with honoring the mother and the father when the child has been conceived, and that they're being taken care of and honored as the sacred vessels that they are to hold a child, and certainly not being in fear about what happens to their body or their child after they're born. Which leads me to kind of the birth story of River, because in my mind, I thought that I'd have her at home, even though I'd had 3 C-sections, and any medical doctor would tell you you're crazy to consider the idea. I was like, well, I've already died and I'm born for this. And I know I'm protected and I'm immortal, so I'm not afraid of death. And I found a midwife that was willing to support me. And then when my water broke, it was about 3 days of no contractions. And so finally, my midwife said, I think we should go to the doctor. And so now at this time, remember I told you I used to make $20,000 a month. By this time, I dematerialized all of my finances. I was down to I'd cashed out my last $40,000 that I had, and that was dwindling down quick. And I was probably down to my last $3,000. So I was going to go to the Costa Rican hospital because they serve all women and children no matter what, which seems like a sweet offer. And but because she was born January 4th, 2021. So we're in the middle of stuff, and I go in and they don't let my midwife in and they don't let my partner in, and I don't speak very well English or Spanish. And and they literally just write your name on a little piece of paper and rip it out and send you into the next room. And in the next room, there's like 100 people and they're waiting. They're all sick. I see a brand new baby in a dirty blanket, and I'm just like, I'm feeling the emotion of that. I'm not even thinking about the idea that I've got to have a child at some point. She's got to come out of there. But it was such a shock to me coming from an American background where I thought I had the best health care and I was always taken care of. And it was like the white collar treatment, to the poverty that I felt when I went in this hospital. And so I'd messaged my friend, she was waiting outside, and I told her what was going on. And she said, Alisha, get out of there now. I'm taking you to the private hospital. I will pay whatever it takes for River to be born. And so she takes me to this private hospital called SEMA. There's not a soul in there. It's brand new, decked out, high class, and what I'm used to. It's such a humbling thing for me to experience all of that before birthing River. And then I'd never had a nasal swab before. I mean, I wouldn't have dared. And then they told me that they would not. Here I am sitting here waiting to have this child, and they're like, we can't birth her until you take this nasal swab, because you could have COVID, and if you did, we would get sick. So either you have to take the nasal swab, or you're going to have to pay $1,000 more so that we can all wear like hazmat suits to deliver your baby, even though we've all been talking in there for hours. It's fucked up. It's crazy. It's so silly, all of these games. So anyways, you're just ready to get it done. We get in there. they're chopping through my body. That's what a C-section really is, just cutting through an entire abdominal system, your uterus. And I've got a ton of scar tissue that she was never going to come out the way that I thought, but I appreciate myself for having the intent. And before I'm even sewn up, they're ready to get her vaccinated. And we had already kind of in our mind thought, shit, we were going to have her at home so we could work out the vaccines with some fake papers kind of thing. But now that we're in the hospital, we just got to do it kind of thing. But so they go to vaccinate her right away. And Eduardo, he's like the most nice, gentle man. He doesn't usually set a boundary, but he said, no, you're not vaccinating my daughter. And that was a back and a forth situation. And eventually I get finished. I come to meet River, and they're bringing in all the stops. You know, they're bringing in every authority. They're showing us all these papers. They're telling us that we're breaking the law. They're not in Costa Rica. They're not used to people saying no. Also, the Costa Rican culture is much more compliant, and so um, less than 24 hours later from a major surgery, I'm in a car leaving the hospital. They wanted to make sure they got paid, and I guess they had to decide between forcing vaccinations or getting their ticket paid. And so my friend, gratefully an angel on this earth, paid for River to be born and never asked for it back. And I'm always in such deep gratitude at the angels that have supported us in so many ways as we were called to walk this path of, for me, leaving behind monetary systems, leaving behind banking accounts and 401ks and like a life I was used to being able to buy whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. I was now being called to completely step out of all systems and all identification and all of it. And so we thought we got home safe and clean. And then this is the crazy part. I get a phone call from the man that runs the main eco village that I used to live in, telling me that he'd gotten a personal call directly from the Minister of the Health of Costa Rica. And so in my mind, I thought he was looking out for me. And later I found out that his whole family lineage is connected to the pharmaceutical companies and has been for many years. He's from Argentina originally. And part of the Jewish faith, not that that matters, but kind of it does actually. And so a few days later, you know, you don't have addresses in Costa Rica. And so besides that they knew a white girl in San Mateo had had a baby, and they just made an assumption, I guess, that a woman that I lived in La Ecovia, that's at least I can't quite put that part together why they knew to call him. But the point is, a few days later, there's a fancy truck at my gate honking the horn with official letters of the PANI, which is the Child Protective Services of Costa Rica. And I just remember I peeked out the window and then I just slid down on the floor like I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want them to know I was home, and I'm breastfeeding River, and my heart is just like I hadn't felt adrenaline in so long. And telling you guys that I was in heaven on earth, I mean it. It was like River being born, she brought me back to earth. You know, Eduardo and I had been in the heavens for so long, and now she was like, get down here. Look what's happening here. And so I was doing the whole like non-duality, neutrality, everything's happening for you. Why am I creating this for myself? Like I was using all this terminology to process all of this and really taking responsibility for it and trying to navigate the acceptance of this experience. And and yeah, still not able to actually even talk out loud about it because I wanted to appear that I was remaining in neutrality, which is sometimes a trick of the spiritual awakening process, is that there are times when things are not acceptable. And there are times where it's okay to be angry. And there's a time when you need to stand up and do something. And it isn't just about compliance. That's not always what God's plan is. So I really had to work through that in myself big time and like rewrite all the spiritual jingle that I put myself
Absolutely.
through, you know?
Yeah, and may I say though, you know, these are the right things for one to do in the moment, because there are levels of the experience that you need to go through. So you did everything right, as everyone does. It's just that in that time That's what you choose to employ or incorporate into your experience to get you through it. What I wish to say here is again, we were on a high divine level called here for protection with Alicia and Eduardo and the child as well. Because again, River is so special as well as Alicia and Eduardo. So this did have what I will say uh, great attention in the divine realm with this. And one thing you said you didn't know how they found you more or less so quickly is because they already knew who you were and they were already tracking everything. So that is the truth of it. And this also, this connects into Sister Nya's case with the children, but not only that case, worldwide, especially in this now with any awakened moms more so, but also moms that are not yet awakened. They don't know yet, the unawakened moms, who they are, but this is happening very rapidly. Every day, more and more are awakening and discovering this higher love, this higher divine service, and the actual reason why you are here. And yes, you cannot remain complacent in these dire times when you are confronted by some of this darkness. You have to stand and you do not give your consent away. So please continue. I love your story. You're so fluent, you're so concise, so succinct, you're so intelligent. I love it. Please continue.
Thank you. Yeah. Wow. It's just been such a wild ride. And they did, of course, know who she was and who I was. And looking back at it now, now that I see the whole medical system the way that I do, I always say once I died, I used to believe in vaccines until I died, and then I never believed in them again. It's like I had the X-ray vision on and I could see through the whole thing because I had all three of my first children vaccinated fully, and they always had respiratory problems. They were always in the hospital. They were always being hospitalized. I worked for Dell Computer Corporation in Austin, Texas headquarters for many years. I was building the AI tech system before I knew what I was doing, working with all the big law firms and financial companies. It was like I was like the undercover celestial being learning how all this was working. I was a part of the financial crash of 2007 of getting computers out financed to a ton of people with no credit just to get tech out of there as fast as possible in everybody's hands so they could be going through this next level of mind control.
Uh, just before you continue, not only the vaccinations, the folic acid and
Mm.
how they had put that did intentionally in 1998, I think they began to do it, made it mandatory in the US, the synthetic folic acid. And this also, just to go from what I just said right to the end point, it affects the consciousness as well. And I class it right up there with chlorinated water because of how toxic it is. And this trick that was put upon especially many moms and children, and even in the formulas that were given to children, it was fortified even with this folic acid. So this is more that is emerging now and coming out to the light. Actually, not only was chlorine put in the food, you have this synthetic folic acid that's been put into the food. So the chlorine in the water, and then this folic acid, which is detrimental to the health, especially of a mother and a child, and even the mother before she gives the child the birth, because there is that amount that goes into the fetus, if you will, without explaining it all out, and I don't need to do that. But yes, so let's get back to your story because it's so important. So
Yeah.
wherever we left off at,
Well, this is
thank
a
you.
good point. I remember when I was pregnant for the first three, they were pushing the folic acid and DHA and all of these special vitamins. And, oh, you get these ones free with your insurance, and you're like, okay, you're just taking all these vitamins, right? Vitamins. And then it's so interesting with River. I never took any supplements. I never took any vitamins. I wasn't concerned if I was eating enough food or good food or no. I was in a pure bliss state the whole time I was pregnant. That's the main key here. And whatever we feel about our child in our womb is what they end up feeling like. It's all about the child in the womb and so of course you're feeling rejection if your mother's like, oh my God, so many of the women that have conceived a child that didn't want the child have felt that from the beginning. And so, yeah, I learned that game by the fourth one. It's like I had to go through the experiment of three to get to one where I finally figured it out. And forgive us all, right? We're all just trying to be a mom here. We're all just trying to figure it out. I was just trying to find the right school. I knew that public schools weren't right, and I'd pay $500 a child, $1,000 a child, just to get them in what I thought was the best or the right school, and none of them are. And actually, people ask me now about where River will go to school. And I was like, what do you mean? She knows the name of every plant. She knows the edible leaves. She knows how to plant seeds. She knows how to play instruments. She knows how to dance. She knows how to speak in three languages. What school does she need? She's telling me the histories of Sita and the Hindus. And, like I didn't even know who Sita was until River told me about Sita. And she calls herself Sita, which is technically the story of Sita. She was a child born of the earth, of the red clay, not of a mother and a father. And so yeah, it was just what a difference to see the medical frame of, and going back just to talk about that a little bit. They, with my first pregnancy, they induced my pregnancy. And I watched this movie called The Business of Being Born by Ricky Lake, and I'd recommend that anybody watches it. It was literally right before I was going to have my third child on a scheduled C-section. And it showed me how they induce the mother, how they give them the Pitocin, how they break their water, how they put them on the drugs, and how it basically ultimately always leads to a C-section. And I was like, that's what happened to me. They make it seem like an emergency in the moment, but it wasn't. They should have never played God like that. Not to mention all the blood they take. They love pregnant women's blood. So that's the other thing I started to realize. I always had experiences looking back. They were always taking my blood. They were all, even when I wasn't pregnant, they would diagnose me with something else to take more blood from me. It was always like that. So I was like, now looking back, I was like, they must like my blood. But I just know too much about the Vatican and the system to
Yeah,
understand the way.
may I interject here? See, because also what occurred, and this is not conspiracy theory, you were knowing who you were when you were born as well because of your mom. So, and I say this with truth because part of what I do here on earth is I'm a divine specialist that I am called in when ones are severely uh, targeted by the darkness. And without going into much with that, yes, what I will say, they knew who you were since birth, and they were watching you as well, and every step of the way because you are a special crystalline one. You already had it in your blood when you were born. So these were the things, the first waivers, if you will, as the crystalline component began to be more widespread throughout the world. So it was known without me getting into how, but I need to say this. But continue, please.
Yeah, that all makes sense. My parents got pregnant when I was young, when they were young, 17 and 18. And so my dad enlisted in the army, and I was born in Fort Bragg in North Carolina. So I was connected to the military for a short time. And of course, I got sick and I was in the doctor and I had pneumonia, and who knows what they're really doing in there, just to be really honest. Uh, Nobody has any idea what's really going on in there. You know, one day I was writing about satanic ritual abuse, and we have this idea or this image of what it all looks like. But the truth is, modern medicine and the way the children are being birthed is satanic ritual. And so we have to reframe the idea of what we think that is. It isn't just a guy with a goat head dancing around a fire all the time that looks like a dark being. It's a child that's being pulled from the mother and being vaccinated. And, you know, I want to bring up a Bible verse, Revelations 12, and the woman of the apocalypse, the woman and the dragon. They talk about, I wrote it down, the dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth so that it might devour her child the moment it was born. And that's Revelations 12. And when you really think about what that means to devour a child when they're born, it's exactly what we're seeing every single day, which leads me to the thymus gland, which we can jump into at another time. But don't let me forget about the thymus gland because it's very important. The planetary high heart chakra that we all have, thymus gland. So so yeah, let's take you back. I've got police at my door. I'm getting a ticket for not vaccinating River, like a citation. And I told them, oh, I'm going to visit my private doctor and get my vaccine book taken care of. Because unfortunately, the truth is with people that have the luxury, they're able to fake these papers, right? And all the people that are actually in the pharmaceutical companies that don't get their children vaccinated, they have ways to work with the papers and things like that. But that's not so fair to someone that doesn't have that luxury. So anyways, when we get confronted with these people, we say, don't worry about it. We're going to the doctor. We're going to get everything taken care of in our private doctor. And the doctor finds out that the Child Protective Services is after us. So I think at that point he decides not to write down all the vaccines. And I had messaged Rick actually at this time when we were going through all this, and he told me stay in integrity. And at this time, you know, I have many friends that are starting to travel and they're getting fake vaccine passports because you could fake it back then, but they're kind of making it to where you can't fake that now. They're even doing tests where they can do like a blue light or whatever and see if you've got the vaccine through your skin. It's pretty crazy. So anyways, so we think we've got it all under control. And then we've got visitors coming again to the gate. And now I've got people that are messaging me on my WhatsApp and telling me, I told them I had received a clear message from the Christ and Mary to never put poisonous water in a holy child. And they just responded, get the girl vaccinated. And uh, and so here we are again. Um, we keep having visits. And some people told me that I needed to be careful because in Costa Rica, they technically own your child and they could take your child from you. I knew I was always protected for sure. Um, and so, you know, many visits later, they would come and we would just leave. We would just disappear for months at a time. Friends would have us stay at their house or whatever would happen. A friend would leave to go to California and let us stay at her house while she was gone. And then we ended up one day, we had police at the gate and they were looking for Eduardo. They kept yelling his name. And we rent our house. So the people that own the house are across the street seeing these police. And so we don't have the same freedom of just saying no, because now we're kind of technically on a rental property and they're wondering why cops are coming to us. And so Eduardo goes out and he gets delivered this stack of papers from the court telling us that we have to go to court. And so at that on that particular date, I knew I needed to get out of the house and not be in a findable space. And I decided not to go to the court. And my children were just visiting from the US. I hadn't seen them in at least a year. And so Eduardo goes into the court system on his own. And he says that he keeps telling them, he kept going like this, and he said, I do not consent. I do not consent. I do not consent. And he said it was like the woman was losing her power, like she had an entity inside of her, and it was like dying every time she said, I do not consent. And he told her that he knew what they were doing with children in the medical industry, with the sex trafficking. And I really do believe Costa Rica is kind of a central hub for all trafficking. It is the highway of the north and the south and has water on both sides. it is the center point of the Bridge of Lemuria and Atlantis. And um, so he went in there and we thought that would be the end of it. But and no, it wasn't the end. They kept coming. And so eventually, we had to leave our location that we loved so much. We did so much beautiful grid work there. We had so many angels from all over the earth come to visit us that were doing the divine work. Most of us have devoted ourselves to this mission, left the money behind, travel with a bag on our back and the crystals or the technology that we have, praying on the lands and the waters. And so I'm meeting all these other angels on the earth that we're all doing the same work. And sometimes you just need a bite to eat. It's like, it's not so easy out there. It really puts you in a position to see where the generosity is or is not. But the Bible always says that those that are doing the true work of God will always have a place to rest their head and food to eat. And so far, that's always been true. So yeah, eventually, we just had to leave it all behind. We had to leave our identity. Eduardo already, he hasn't had a phone in 5 years. He's talk about a totally different type of family life. He's been a devoted father to River. I mean, since she was born, we really aren't on technology so much. He's never on technology. He hasn't had an identification pretty much since I've known him. And so I slowly stepped out of those systems. I didn't report River to the United States and ask them permission to ordain her as a born child. And if she hadn't have been born in a hospital, they wouldn't know she existed. But clearly this was all part of the plan. And so, yeah, I mean, at this point, I've definitely left behind my rights to travel. I have my children are in Austin now. I got to see them 3.5 years ago was the last time I saw them in person. Um, but I kind of joke around when I meet people that I'm a Costa Rican criminal and an illegal alien because I don't have all of those things that people talk about, those immigrants and things like that. Yeah, I'm one of those. But when I share my story, I say it as a joke. I'm like, oh, I'm a Costa Rican criminal. I've been running from the police because I didn't get my child vaccinated. I always throw it out there very lightly just to kind of gauge where people are at in their own journey. And some people cry, some people are afraid, some people are sad, some people are angry. Some people think I should just go get her vaccinated and then this all goes away. And a lot of people have been afraid for me, afraid for me to. And so it's really been a beautiful opportunity for me to have left behind the United States. And I mean, I remember when I would have never imagined not paying taxes. I could have gotten in trouble for that. I'd never imagined not paying for health insurance. I could get a fine for that, all of a sudden to like literally understanding that I have no authority to report to. I'm never giving my power away to anyone or anything. Nothing else outside of me determines what rights I have or do not have. You have to know that first, so deep in your soul. You have to feel that backbone so heavy, so strong within yourself that's got to be the first thing. Since then, I've just been like, I'm hiding in the mountain right now, and I'm not hiding my voice. I'm talking very transparently about what's going on. I do feel that I'm in an invincible phase of my life and that I'm protected. And also, yeah, I'd like to still have some freedoms.
With this, Alicia, are you a member of divine-gpms.world?
I remember when I'd signed up for it, like right when it first came out, but
Yeah,
I've been through so much, all my technology breaks down and then I disappear a while and so I never did tune into it again.
yeah. Well, this is your full sovereignty, your full uh, decree as well. So all children are to consent and they have their sovereignty decree with it. But so what we are now is a universal nation with universal jurisdiction and let's say a degree of sovereignty that is above what was known on earth because we are a universal nation with the universal laws and divine law. But nevertheless, anyone watching, it's important to go check out the website, consent yourself, but every child's consent, if they're 1 minute old, if they were just born. You can consent for your child. It's your duty of care. It's your actually your moral obligation to secure their freedom and their future. And divine GPMS is the replacement system. It's the heaven on earth really being anchored in lawfully. So it is the unprecedented time that's been spoken about through antiquity, and this is it. Um, but nevertheless, I have some other questions that I had wrote down. And so at this point, I have this written down. Why do you think your relationship is important? So yours and Eduardo's and even Rivers, your relationship with Gaia, with Earth, with this present reality, and with divinity. So, what do you, why do you think that your relationship overall is so important in this now?
Yeah, in all humility, I say we're carrying the codes of the Christos Sophia, the child, the mother, father, child, Trinity energy. That's what we truly are here to embody, to model, to live, to be reborn as a cosmic citizen. We knew heaven on earth was the mission. We knew assisting humanity in the planetary ascension was the mission. We knew the declaration of divine love and protection was being called through our vessels to stand up to things we didn't agree to. And honestly, to have these conversations that we're having now, it's all kind of led us to here. And really thinking back, when I landed here so innocently 7 years ago, it was still like I was undercover. I was still a bit under amnesia. I'd just been handed the book Bringers of the Dawn, Teachings of the Palladians, and that was quite an eye-opener for me. Because I'd always prayed in my life. I'd cry, why are children getting cancer? Why is there war? Why is there poverty? And I would always like think, how can I change these things? How can I help with sex trafficking? Like all of these problems of the world. And then it was like, it led me right here. And now I understand a lot more clear, why does disease exist? Why does poverty exist? Oh, there's new world orders and secret societies. I couldn't have known it back then. I was just so innocent in it. You just think it's all by chance or something. Now there's no mystery. And so it was like I had to go undercover to kind of see how this all works, macro, microcosm, with particular characters, with particular bloodlines, with particular plans to start to really see like, oh my God, I'm in the middle of the fucking New World Order. I'm at the headquarters, World Bank, United Nations, Pfizer, all right here in Costa Rica. The whole thing went from Holy Land, Promised Land, Heaven on Earth to it's being completely invaded by big pharma money, digital currencies, building these big prisons and to protect the rich. And, and Bayer just put a $200 million contract in. So then until River was born, I didn't even dare go look at that stuff because I was just dancing in the clouds of heaven. And now it's like, okay, these motherfuckers are after my kid. Let's get a little more truthful about what's going on. Who are these people? Why is this happening? What's going on here? I thought I was going to be safe in my little peaceful community, and then I saw everybody freaking out and like turning on each other. Everyone's afraid to get a disease because they were probably a part of the ones that knew that this thing was coming before it ever came. It was like these eco villages were set up as kind of refuges while the system started moving through this planned experiment and this planned process. And so it really gave me a deeper idea into what that looks like, the idea of elitism and even the idea of Bill Gates. It's so funny. Like, I don't even know if that dude exists, if he's even alive on the physical form. It's like more like a code word for big money that's constantly being laundered and moved around through different projects. Yeah, so it's been a really just an innocent unfolding of getting to know people on the human level before I start to see the bigger picture of who they are and where they're actually operating, and trying to have a level of compassion that I'd love to see the innocence in everybody and imagine that no one is intentionally doing these things, that everybody's just caught up in a really fucked up game, probably possessed, likely, actually. That's really how I'm seeing this. Even when I started to explore a little bit about pedophilia, I started to think, why does this exist? Why is that going on? If I don't just turn away from it and get angry, let me get to the perpetrator victim. Like, how long has this been going on? How many generations have these things been happening? What's going on with these rituals? And it was like all of that was starting now that I've been able to kind of almost live it, experience it, witness it, and start to summarize it and realize that even the most bad guys aren't that bad. They might not even realize what they're fucking doing. It's like there's this level of compassion for this darkness that's taken over almost all of humanity. And it's like, don't get me wrong, I believe that there are people out there that are intentionally knowing what they're doing. Like I understand the secret societies. I understand the Mason order and how they planned this whole thing, actually, and all of the United States plans. And right now it's about dominating and controlling the water, the pure, clean water. And that's what I'm seeing happen next level, besides controlling the children, is what they're doing with the land and the territory and the water now, how it's all the prices have gone up so much and the manipulation of the cost of the dollar and just the taking up of the land, but still that big gap in the level of poverty. A house cleaner here in Costa Rica makes about $2, $4 an hour. Same with a construction worker, and they're just working all day, every day. And the cost of getting food here is out of this world expensive. And so this is a location where a lot of the millions and the billions are coming in, and I couldn't have perceived it from the old version of myself. It's like kind of just had to unfold slowly to where I've actually got to know some of these people on a human level, to not demonize them as hard as I would have if I wouldn't have known them, because ultimately they still have some good hearts in there. It's like, forgive them for they know not what they do.
Thank you. So you began to touch on, let's say, the sex parties and child trafficking right there in Costa Rica. Before we go into that, I'd like to ask, do you know of any other parents in Costa Rica or worldwide, moms that have had their children taken? Uh, do you have any close contacts that are currently fighting to get their children back, if you will? Um, yeah, just to keep it simple.
Yeah. I don't know of anyone that's had their child taken, but I will tell you an interesting story of a woman that was just here last night. We did an 11 gathering yesterday, and so I met this woman, and she had her child at home on her own, but she tore and she needed to go to the hospital, and so to get fixed up, and so they knew she had a child. And so a few days later, up in the mountain, a little moto scooter with a refrigerated cooler on the back comes in and jabs her kid. And so her child is about the age of River, but doesn't really talk so much, and has a completely different level of communication. And she's since had another child totally on her own with no assistance. So she actually did the natural birth, but because they knew that child existed, came to her home, and she didn't know any better. I mean, what do you do when they come and they're just ready to jab? And so we've seen the effects of that. And to have someone with a direct story like that, still shocking to me.
Yeah, indeed. So, and what we do when we energize certain themes, then what occurs is we start attracting to us things that support these themes, but also more information comes in, and it's part of the process at gathering all of the information to build the absolute truth worldwide. And this, what we're doing today, is one of the integral parts of that. And so, with the children, and what I will say is the SOS Kinderdorf, I believe, if I said that right, Sister Nya, child centers out of Austria, has three or four centers in Costa Rica but they're also in 130 other countries worldwide with these centers. And these centers now, as a result, a partial, if not a full result of what Sister Nya and we are doing in Austria at exposing and revealing uh, I need to say deeper levels of child trafficking. So you're looking at the organized child trafficking, but also the sinister connections with stealing children and missing children. And approximately 20,000 children, refugee children, went missing in Austria, I think in 2020 uh, uh, or 2020 to 23, I just forget, but also next door to Italy. So, what I'm saying is, all of Europe, many children are going missing, as well as in the US. The numbers are staggering. The children that are just vanishing, that are being taken as part of, this worldwide trafficking and much deeper things with this. So, my question would be is that you began to experience, let's say, some things I believe I heard you said in your lives that I've watched about, let's say, some of the elites, some of these big parties, and perhaps some children present around there. Um, I just wonder, can you offer us any information, any observations, any experience that you had that might have been, let's say, conspicuous to the point that there might have been something not right going on with the children around there?
It's interesting because when you start to study information like this, it can play with your head a little bit. When you start to be aware of this information, you're like, who isn't a pedophile? You're just like, it's important that we don't lose our mind too much and like project it on everyone, right? So I say clearly, I can't say I've ever caught anybody in the act of anything. I've just seen interesting things with certain children that became transgender. That fathers created special bathing suit brands for them so that they could conceal their parts and look more like a girl. And I met a man who was an ex-CEO who adopted a son who he was doing ayahuasca with and dancing naked around the fire. And they were just like very interesting. I started to get into the idea of like sometimes these adoptions of foster children, they seem as though they're just so sweet, like they're going to take care of a child, but they end up becoming their little pet. And so I can't make assumptions about any of those things, but unfortunately what happens is these children who were born not of love are just passed around, and then you find someone that can psychologically tell somebody, well, this is what love is. And so you start to see that sort of thing manifest. So um, I have seen a lot of sex toy, sex party, um, expression and the idea of sexual healing and groups and tantras and things like that that I do not participate in. I'm definitely I'm always a preacher of purity and holiness and divine love, and sometimes I get picked on for that, but I always say there's no shame in the holiness. And I will say I've had a lot of people come to work with me. I work with some medicine sometimes with people bring up to me things that have happened to them in their life, usually in religion. There's so much sexual violation going on with people in religion, and that no one's ever really talked about. And a whole lot more male on male stuff that nobody's ever talked about, which is perpetuating the current age of pedophilia and pornography addiction. That we've got to get to the root of what this is going on. But I've had direct people come and work with me with medicine, talking about men they've been with who have addictions to violent children pornography. Like, it's coming to me where people are laying this out, and even the men are comfortable to show it to the woman to see if she'll approve. And like, this thing is really, it's deep and it's big and it's wide. And more than likely, we all know many people that are suffering with these types of things. And so we need to understand what we're working with and how it actually works and how AI is a big part of it.
So, are you saying it's widespread then what you're feeling in Costa Rica? You know, what you just said it felt like you're seeing so many extensive threads of it everywhere that it's like it's prevalent throughout there. Would that be correct with your observations? And I love how you keep so objective and neutral because that is so important. We don't wish to go into conjecture or speculation, which takes us away from the reality and the facts of it. But the reality, once you begin putting everything together, it shows blatantly the story, but the extents of it. And when we get with pedophilia and all of these sort of things of dementing a child's consciousness to what love should be like, that these are sick, evil things. These are not God, they're not good things, and they're not supportive of a great, good society. So, with
You
that, I don't wish to sound like a brimstone and fire preacher, but this is the reality of it. What are they, let's say, attempting to do with the children? We know what they're doing, but what I'm beginning to see now, what you're sharing, is the extent there in Costa Rica of it as well. So it is worldwide, as we know. Um, so just perhaps I got a couple more questions just to go away, and we can, of course, come back to this topic, what we're just on. And Sister Nya, I'd love for her to chime in soon and ask some questions if we may. I have two other questions wrote down, and I'm going to ask both of them right at once. What makes you think or know that God is real? And what profound, let's say, godly experiences that you have had that supports the existence of a superior intelligent consciousness entity, conscious entity, I will put it in the least.
know.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting. My definition of God has expanded quite a bit over the years. And as I've been following this mathematical system called the dream spell, I actually call God galactic ordering dynamic. And I say everything is number, God is a number, and God's math is perfect. Even today, we're on the 13th number of the Fibonacci spiral, kin number 233 today. And so I know that I have a deeper trust in the understanding the way I see the 144,000 as a monad consciousness, a fractal consciousness of the many, the one in the many. And I call it Mary's Army of Light. Um, I know from which I came. I embody that original source light energy. I know that I don't normally incarnate into karma and war death type of planets. I believe we predetermined this mission before we ever came here to this earth to come at this particular, like a time traveler in a moment in time to rewrite and recourse planetary and human race destruction. And it's so far beyond any level of religion or God that we can know on this earth plane. It's something far more celestial, heavens, something beyond what we've been able to perceive in our consciousness in this current lifetime. I live every day as if it's a miracle, and that's the stepping out of monetary systems is a good way to test that. It's a good way to test like that somehow you do always have a pillow and somehow you do always have a fruit. but I understand we are the divine living light here in the human form, and we're rewriting the crucifixion implant, is what I would call it. As I started going into all of these churches, and I would see these people desperately praying to the mother, praying to God, but with nothing, without the soul, without the connection to the spirit. I started to witness the satanic rituals that are going on in these churches. And I would see the crucifixion and this bloody man on a cross. And I was like, wow, talk about an implant to make you think that if you ever said you're the Son of God, that you would be crucified and die for that. And that has been the fear that we've all had, to remember that we are that, and that we are one with that, and that we come from that, and we are here to embody that, and that the Christ's return is a family and it's many of us, and for us to really rise into the invitation of embodying that type of light, which washes away all sin, fear, and trauma, and returns us to the immortal ways from which we came, eternal life.
Purification. Yes. Ah, there she is.
Want to say hi? Okay, go see Papa. Okay, go see Papa. Go see
Uh,
Papa. Papa can help you, but I'm on a thing right now. I
so,
wanted, well, go ahead.
so if I may, would you say that we're here at this time on Earth for a definite reason, a mission, that it's not by chance, it's not by random, that let's say you have awakened in others and that you've experienced this cosmic love, unspoken of before. So these things are not random. It is by design, if you will, to agree with that, but also right in this important time. And by the way, today is number 316 day of the year. So that's a good thing as well. But yeah, would you agree with that, Alicia? And this is River.
This is River. You want to say hi? You just got your beautiful new dress from our friend yesterday. We were celebrating the 1111 portal. Do you want to say anything? Okay, you'll have to go find him. Maybe he's in the river house. Go check in the river house. I can't help you right now, but I know you can find him. I believe in you. I know you can do it. She always tells me that she's a warrior and a protector of the forest, and that she can do anything. She is so strong. I just love it. Yeah, she's my angel for sure. Yeah, I want to go back to this topic before you ask me these questions, because there's usually such a cutoff. When we hear about the pedophilia, we get so disgusted by it and we want to like hurt someone or kill someone or charge someone or something like that. No, this is a sickness that's been passed around through the generations, through satanic ritual cults and secret societies, where instead of sacrificing the son according to the Bible in the version of killing the son, they actually take the innocence of the son. And that's how the demon is implanted into the system from a young age. And then it continually perpetuates the same action as it grows up. And this is what I've been understanding. And that's why if we could hold our breath for just a minute and open up an accepting, passionate heart of compassion and forgiveness, we could make it safe enough for someone to come out and say, I am struggling with pedophilia. I am struggling with pornography addiction. I am fill in the blanks. And that's what I started to realize, is that they can't come clean until I have a place safe enough to come clean. And so, as I started working a little bit in the medicine world and really creating that field of the mother of love, compassion, safety, forgiveness, I would have people come to me safe enough to confess and say what it is that's been done to them, and also to say what they've done to someone, because they want to be free and they want to be atoned. And see, these demons keep getting deeper and darker, and it's because no one's able to say the stuff out loud that the thing can feed on it and turn it into darker, darker things. And so until we understand that, we can't understand how to end this virus. And that's what I've been being prepared for.
Well, if I may, what we look at, the child is born innocent.
Mhm.
But then the child is indoctrinated from society, but also indoctrinated with the demonic, let's say, not demonic, let's say wicked or non-virtuous experiences. So the point that I'm making here is that it begins with the child and what the child is subjected to in society. So, for example, if we take River as a beautiful example there, she is in her full innocence. She has been kept from that infiltration from the society. So, when you look at, let's say, how to stop pedophilia, you've got to begin where it started from. And that's when the child begins to be indoctrinated. And when we look in the US with children going to kindergarten, 3 and 4 years old, and let's say at daycare and getting sexually abused and seeing these things that occur not only from, let's say, ones that are supposed to be looking after them, but other children that are coming from an environment that's already infected with it. So the main root and cause is the current functioning society. And the point I'm making is that we need to change it right there at its roots, if you will. And River is a prime example of changing that, if that
She
makes sense.
is. No, she is. And she's been a part of me being able to even open up to this world because I would say that before I wanted to believe there was no such thing as darkness. I wanted to believe that I wanted to look away from these topics. I couldn't handle them. And River's looking for you, babe, if you can find her. So, it's interesting. Yeah, until and I'm a Scorpio with many planets in Scorpio. So I had to finally embrace the idea that I needed to actually be able to see it and understand how it works. So the information that's been coming to me very important is number one, a lot of the sexual trauma is happening right in the family as much as it's happening in the schools too. And it's nothing that a mother, father, or brother or sister would ever want to talk about. But there's so much more incest that's gone on through the generations, and no one's talking about it. And so, I mean, sometimes, but not really. And then a lot of it is coming through the Catholic and the Mormon church. Like I've had people come to me specifically and having recalls of grandfather uh, satanic ritual types of things with scary masks and grandmothers having orgasms around fires with children. And so the very thing that we think is the safe place that's protecting our children is quite the opposite. The churches are the richest, they have so much money, and the sickest. And so there's just so many levels of it. And it's like there's such innocent people that just go to church and they pray and they cry and they serve and they feed and then there's a whole nother level to it that's all connected to pharmaceuticals. That's the dogs might go crazy. I think the monkeys are here. When the monkeys come, the dogs start to bark like crazy. We'll see what happens. So, anyways, um, the more open I am to receive the truth about this beast, the more I understand what's going on, specifically with how they break the child's psyche. Supposedly, these are the ways that they think they're going to get into heaven. They literally do these types of rituals where they put the child in a state. Normally, they're also drugged, but they know how to work with mind control to fracture the child's soul. So they start to have a split personality and they maybe compartmentalize and that's why actually a lot of people that have been sexually assaulted may not remember it, but they're also usually highly intelligent because they've had to close some things off so it opens up more advanced levels of their brain activity and they can perceive in different ways. Oh, muchas gracias. And um, so that's what I started to understand. And when they do these torture types of rituals, they have them call on the Christ, and the Christ doesn't come to save them. Satan does. And so when Satan comes to save them, Satan becomes their father. And so now they've basically, and this would go along the lines of Lisa Renee's work, and she talks a little bit about the negative alien agenda and the black sun agenda. That's basically what's going on a galactic level. So a lot of these people have been passing this stuff around a lot. A lot of these indigenous, let's talk about really what's happening with the children. It's not always just sexual, because let me tell you what's happening in San Mateo in the big space where I grew up, this nice little eco village area. Well, it came time for them to build eco village number 2. And a lot of big names have been connected to these villages, especially with them being connected to Netflix and online, and it's kind of a famous place to come. Well, this man had come with some big money, and I started getting very into my scorpionic gift and curse is that I'm very suspicious and very much like a detective. So I went into research mode. It's starting to rain here, so hopefully you guys can still hear me. It might sound like traffic. I'm just going to close the door real quick. So when this man comes into the community, he doesn't quite fit in. And I knew he was from France. His last name was pretty fancy. And I started to look him up. And right away, you know, there was a school that my children went to called Casa Sula. And it was just a pure school. It was actually by a group called Grupo Orion, which I thought was funny. But they didn't believe in technology. It was all natural materials. It was like beyond a Montessori school. My kids were bilingual in 2 months without being taught. It was just so beautiful. And then when this new group came in, they wanted to change everything around. Casa Sula used to mean or meant preserve the sacred seed in one of the indigenous tribes. That's what Casa Sula stood for. Well, they crossed that school out and they changed it to the real world school, and they start putting the technology in. And so as I start researching this guy a little more, I noticed that he's called a serial entrepreneur. And then I also noticed that they're connected to a orphanage here in Costa Rica in Santa Teresa. And then I see that he's connected to a company, a biotech company called Immune Tech. And then I see that Bill Gates Foundation had funded him for thymus gland research. And so, can you guys still hear me okay, even though it's probably pretty loud?
No, we hear you fine. We don't
Okay,
hear the
good.
background. This is so good and so important as well. And this is how you can connect the dots so quickly and so easily with so many of, let's say, these organizations. And we've been doing this in our investigative research and expose of all of these criminal doings in Austria and Europe as well, and yes, connected to the US all around the world. And this is what you can do very easily now. What I will say for investigative journalists, you can connect the dots and show how it does go all together, that it is organized crime. It is a organized crime syndicate with the actual intent, which is blatant, that exposes it all. And this is part of what we're doing here. So what you are doing is what you just did is the same, if you will, what we were doing. But you wanted to go forward with this, and I believe you had the thymus gland. You wanted to, um, and before you go into the thymus gland, I wish for you to be intricate with this, go into the detail of everything you do know, for the simple reason just last night in another case about the thyroid in a young girl that child services is taking. And there is the important things. As you know, nothing is by chance. And when we have these connected dots come up, it's because it's more information. So without
Yeah.
me rambling, go ahead, please.
It's like, you know, I would just go into these inquiries, and now I notice that the online world has minimized itself quite a bit. It used to be I'd get a hit and then I'd get into the remote viewing and like the time traveling and following a trail. And now I realize most everything's been wiped. There's not much you can find out there. Like I even just tried to back my way up and look up something I've looked up before, and it's like it's disappeared. But this stuff I could still find and verify online. And so, yeah, I started to inquire, what is this big money? Where is it coming from? What is its intent? What's up with these orphanages? What's up with these schools? And then, you trail it back and you find this Bill Gates money, and then you find they're connected to billionaires, and then they're all at the blood ball for leukemia, and they're all in their red satin clothes. And I'm like, God, this is too fucking close to home. Like, you don't want to believe it's true, but I guess it's got to come out somewhere, and that this is what it looks like right before my eyes. And so, specifically what we need to understand about the thymus gland anyways, and we're in the process of understanding how to reframe science, because it's been such a sham and a hoax. Because if it really worked, we wouldn't all be so sick in the world. So that's the first thing we've got to understand is the pharmaceutical industry as an industry. But the thymus gland is what I would call your actual planetary high heart technology. It's your time traveling technology. It's located right behind your sternum. And what some people might even diagnose in current science as a, anxiety, let's say. Because see, when I'm walking through a Stargate or when I'm receiving divine information, my technology starts going very fast. It's like a vibration. And so what they say, though, in science is that you're born with a thymus gland, but by the time you're 8 or 9, it's totally defunct and it calcifies because you're starting puberty. And I'm like, no, it's because you vaccinated children, actually. That's why this technology is not working. They intentionally don't want you to access that. However, you can recover this technology. So what I'm finding is when we think about the child trafficking, sometimes our minds can go into the sexual nature, but what they really want is they want that blood. They want the blood, and they want the organs, and they want the stem cells. And so this guy in particular there's something with the T cells. See, this is all the dark side's mimic code for wanting to be beautiful and immortal. They're using all of these things for their immortality, or an attempt to try to find immortality. But you can only find immortality through a pure heart and returning to the eternal life. But they're trying to find it through all these mimic codes. And so unfortunately, and that's where the orphanages come in, because of course, if you've got a child that was never loved anyways, no one's going to notice if they're missing. But I want to go deeper than that to what another thing I've discovered, which has been a hard one to actually say out loud, because I say this with all respect to all beings and reverence and gratitude to all. But what I'm recognizing right now is this level of reverence for the indigenous tribes. It's all fake anyways, because there actually isn't any respect for the indigenous tribes, really, but it's like they try to pretend that there is. See, a lot of these people are getting paid off to birth babies. And especially in all these ayahuasca ceremonies, all my friends will go to, and they'll see that the whole tribe's always pregnant, but there's not a lot of kids running around. And so and then they're sitting in the United States, they're sitting on uranium mines and plutonium mines, which really, to me, they're pretending there's radioactive substances down there so that you don't go to investigate, but that's likely where true tunnels are being moved around, where the indigenous tribes are. And even in women's trafficking, a lot of them are indigenous women, because no one's asking any questions. So I started to get a little suspicious, because I would go and I would meet with some of these tribes, and I would be like thinking I'm going to meet like the cosmic star walkers and the masters. And what I really was seeing was poverty, alcoholism, incest, and poverty. And they might know how to weave a basket, and there might even be being used for like a tourist attraction for someone that wants to come visit Costa Rica and take a picture of themselves with an indigenous group, but really what's going on is that I believe the breeding program is strong in these societies. And as much as I do believe that there are also artificial incubators, I think that a lot of these women's bodies are being used to have children. And I think also what I'm learning too is that the value of an aborted child in the medical society is a really big deal. So having a formed fetus, but not fully formed, there is information there. Just like they take the bovine out of a calf of a cow, it's specifically extracted while the baby cow, I always say what they do to the cows, they do to you. but they take it out of the calf while it's in the womb of the mother, and it's like the most advanced collagen or something like that. And they talk about circumcising the children and using their foreskin for anti-aging. I mean, they're openly talking about this shit. It's so crazy. It's like mind-blowing to me that they're not even hiding it. And so sometimes we can think of it on the adrenochrome level and the sexual level, but we don't really understand that there's many that are being, it's all stem cells and plasma. And this is the other crazy thing. 2 children in my old fancy community in Texas got diagnosed with what they called a very rare brain cancer called DIPG. And so the first one that gets literally kids totally healthy. Now, I'll tell you, when I worked in Austin, Dell Computer Corporation, so we've got rich Jewish billionaire Michael Dell. He has a children's hospital called Dell Children's Hospital. The last time I was visiting, he was building his next hospital, and it's called Ascension Hospital. And anyways, this little kid named Brock, he's 9 years old, super healthy, loves dinosaurs, falls out of a tree, never had a problem in his life, goes to the children's hospital, and he just gets diagnosed with a rare form of brain cancer, never had a sign of it before, just went in for a brain scan, and now he's got a rare form of brain cancer. And the next thing you know, they got him on a protocol, and he's fattened up and he's numbed out and he's died in 30 days. And so I just remember like raising money and doing the walk and like talking about it and doing a workout in his name for his mom and cooking dinner for him and all of the things and crying like, oh my God, I couldn't imagine losing my child. And then I'm selling my $1 million house, and I'm selling at, little did I know, I wasn't putting the pieces together. I sold it to a child cancer doctor that had just moved to Austin. It was like, child cancer is booming, come to Austin, Texas, and Houston, Texas, and all of this. And so then after I'd moved here, so that was still a mystery to me, I just thought he just had a rare form of cancer. And so please talk to Papa about it, River. So then this next time I see a pop-up about my old community that I was from, and a child was, okay, go talk to him, because I'm having this talk here. Unless you want to talk with me, you're welcome to come and talk with me if you'd like. Papa can help you with everything that you need. He can help you, I promise. He's gonna help you. Look, he's right there to help you. So this next child gets diagnosed with DIPG, and I'm like, wait a minute, another child within a 0.2 mile radius is getting diagnosed with this DIPG, and it's something with the medulla oblongata. And so I'm like, this cannot be fucking right. They are misdiagnosing these children so that because there's a Mason system within the medical system always. Even I was born in Cape Fear Hospital in North Carolina, and my mom told me back in the day that they were busted for organ trafficking. And so we don't even realize the truth of organ trafficking, plasma trafficking, blood, the anti-aging, the biohacking of the immortal realms, and different things like this. So everyone's just trying to mimic this immortal technology that we already have within us. And then I want to tell you one last story that I had right before my eyes. The last time I went to Austin 3.5 years ago, I saw an old friend of mine. He was in the hospital. I used to work with him at Dell. And I see that basically he couldn't walk. He was a healthy man, and all of a sudden he couldn't walk. Papa has to help you, River. Papa has to help you. I have to do this right now. So, okay, so I'm going back to Austin, Texas. I'm going, and I see my friend Becker, who's sitting in the hospital, can't walk anymore. And I message him, I'm like, Becker, what's going on? And I asked him, did you get the vaccine? And he said, yeah. And I was like, how many? And he said 3. And he goes, but the doctor told me it's not a vaccine injury, that I already had lesions on my brain and my spine before I ever got the vaccinations. And I'm like, okay, you can't necessarily tell them, but you know what's going on here. And so I tell him, I'm like, listen, you haven't seen me in a lot of years. I've kind of got a little hippie over the days, but I work with crystals and sound. And if you're open for a visit, I'll come meet you at the St. David's Hospital when I get into town. And he's super open for it. And I sit there next to him on the bed and I just start to weep with him as he's feeling like he's losing his manhood because he can't use his legs. And he goes, wow, it's crazy. I was not supposed to have this appointment. It's in the neurosurgeon department. And he's like, it's crazy that this woman wasn't supposed to come till 4, but she's here now. So I guess you're supposed to be here. And so I see this woman, she's a nurse, and she's just on her phone checking stuff. She's got him set up to this thing. And I see on the machine, it says plasma exchange. And they've got these mason jars looking size things, and they're pulling all his white plasma, his white blood out and filling these jars with this white plasma fluid. And it's like plasma exchange. And I'm like, they're fucking harvesting plasma. And so anyway, so that was one part of it. And then I remember as I went to get up after I'd laid all these crystals out, I lost my emerald tablets crystal. I had an Andara emerald that just disappeared after that day. It's somewhere in Austin. But I just remember as I stood up, blood just gushed out of my body. And I heard, this is the blood of the Christ. And I was like, poof, wow, what a different story of the blood of the Christ with a crown and with getting crucified versus the blood of the mother. And that tends to happen when I'm working with someone and working in the cleaning and the purification field, is sometimes my body just starts bleeding to assist with using the womb for this healing and transfiguration process. And so it was all making more sense to me. It's like, and thinking of how pretty much every sacred text that's in print right now is basically dishonoring of the feminine. It's always about the man, but it's not really honoring the woman. She's either a prostitute or she's this, or the men can have all these women and the women are just over here. And it's like, we're so much more than birthing a child. It's like, how did we forget? Like my friend that grew up in the Russian Orthodox told me that if she was bleeding, she couldn't even enter the church, or she'd have to cover her head. And so it's like, how have we forgotten the power of the mother and the power of the feminine and the power of this true blood that our body produces for a purpose and a reason? Although I remember times where we did not bleed to have a child, nor did we even have to have a sexual interaction to have a child. But that's a little more like, an old time. I always say we're in the rewrite of the fall of Atlantis right now. Like this is the fall of Atlantis that we're in right now. Like the whole story about the fall of Atlantis is all about all this shit. It's all the genetic stuff and the sexual stuff. It's like we're right in the middle of it and we're just kind of rewriting it. So anyways, the crazier thing about that about this plasma exchange is one time I had a friend who was, he drives an Uber. And he was telling me, yeah, I'm kind of in this ghetto spot that I used to grow up in Mississippi. And he's like, my number one client are always the people that are addicted to drugs. Every few days, they can go donate plasma and get paid for it. And so that pays for their next. And so literally even that, like, so see, we need to look at this whole trafficking thing and what they're doing with children, what they're doing with humans. It's like, it's so much sicker. It's all about plasma. It's all about stem cells. It's all about trying to be immortal through the innocence of a child's fluids and the experiments of this game. It's on so many levels. So that's what's going on with these orphanages too. It can be sexual, it can be ritual like that, but I would say that we shouldn't look away from, I can't wait for the movement and the truth to come of people to start to talk about what's really been done with them. And I'm going to share one other thing with you all. I was working with a woman who ended up getting impregnated by an Aztec shaman. And apparently the story goes, he was born, and she told me after she got pregnant and moved to his village in Mexico, this was many years ago, that she started to recognize that his family was a part of dark magic, heavy dark magic, and connected to the Masons. And connected to the Aztecs, they say. And so apparently he, which I believe like many others, were told that they were the special one. And so the special one is told they're the special one and that they'll get special teachings by verbal initiation. And then who knows what other kinds of initiations that they're doing to these special ones. And then they raise them up to be medicine men and things like that. And ultimately they're continually breeding their seed out there. And they're basically practicing satanic ritual, which is happening to a lot of people that are going to these plant medicine ceremonies, and they think they're with an honorable shaman, But what they're really doing is just passing down the codes of what's been coded within to them. And so what I learned is in these tribes that when the lights went down in the village, the men were always leaving their rooms and hopping around to sleep with all the boys. And so this has been going on for a long time. And no one's really, especially there's a lot of shame around male on male, because I know a lot of women that have come to me and said, you know, my mom's boyfriend did this to me, or my brother did this, but most men still don't feel safe enough yet to come out and say that a man did something to them. And that's usually how those types of shadows start to manipulate them. And those are usually the ones that end up like the pedophilia addiction within the Mormon church from the direct people I've met that are now ex-Mormon is extravagant. It's more common than it is not. And so everyone's just kind of overlooking this whole game, and they're all adopting kids and like looks like they're a happy family of 10 children, and you're like, okay, what's going on here?
Wow, one thing I need to say, this humanoid Rick, I come from a rural uh place in Canada, Nova Scotia, and very rarely would you hear something about like what you're saying now. It was not common. But one thing that I come to see uh once I become divine and looked more out into the world, yes, I see how prevalent it was everywhere. So what I wish to say, being a human Rick, I was ignorant and oblivious to the extents in the outside world of what it was. I cannot speak directly now from where I came from, but I still feel that it's not sick like that. It was very, very rare, at least. But what I've come to see is with the US, not just because a lot of my attention has gone there with society and looking at things. It is it is very sick, but not only there, worldwide, as we said, and what we're discovering more and more of as we turn over the stones, and in this time, no stone goes unturned. But having said that, we're getting quite lengthy. Sister Nya, do you have any questions for uh, for Sister Alicia or any topics? Please go ahead.
Oh, first of all, Alicia, you did an amazing job. You touched so many topics. I could collaborate, with a lot of topics you have touched on. And, I also knew a long while from this whole thing. But, when they started to take away my children months ago, and I needed to go deeper into it, and I came across real cases with other mothers, which touched everything, what you are talking about, from sexual abuse, ritual abuse, organ, and what they're doing to children, in hospital, in schools. And, yes, it's exactly what Rick is talking about. It is the whole beast system, it's the society, it's everything. And and also the school that are preparing the children to be abused, right? So they are not questioning anything. They are blindly following things. Also, especially, in those cases, like with I, or what we are currently working on, with the court, where, you as a mother, they try to silence you, to ignore specific symptoms, or to give the child to the abusive parents, right? So it's very quite obvious, what's going on. But it's so quite much. It's amazing. You did such an amazing job, without getting too detailed. That's amazing. um, what but what I wanted to ask also, because currently, what Rick was touching on is about the SOS Kinderdorf, which is called, the SOS Children Villages. So we have currently a situation, meaning like, the SOS Children Village is based in Austria. And they have a couple of children's places, you know, with a topic or a concept, you know, with a huge families with different kinds of mothers and fathers there. But, you know, what is currently, you know, coming to the surface more and more here in Austria, what you also can see, which is quite good to see how this is all involved into it, right? Because the numbers of children that are being abducted from parents, especially from awakened mothers, meaning like, you know, especially those who wants to raise their children, you know, with a self-determination, completely free, or especially if you don't put them and place them into school, you know, they come in and take away your child, right? Or they just don't have any reason and just take them away. So it's quite interesting with this. So my question is, because we also figured out, as Rick already said, as well as children villages, there are more than 130 countries worldwide involved, meaning like there are 572 villages worldwide. And, you know, just recently it came to the surface that, you know, for example, there's a head in Germany from the SOS Children Village, which came into the SOS Children Village when he was 13 to Austria. And the head of this children village is already, you know, in the public because he has abused, you know, a lot of children in all those villages, right? So this guy went ahead and, you know, allowed a big someone who donated a lot of money to his children village, you know, to get access to children, you know, in Nepal. So as you can see, it goes over through all countries, right? So what is now going on is starting to investigate about trafficking, you know, abuse and all those kind of things, and it's starting to ramping up here as well. So it would be also interesting, you know, to hear, because, you know, there's also a money trail with the adoption things of children, right? Because right now there are less children to adopt. So what they are doing is to take out children, you know, from beautiful, loving homes to give them to foster families, right? And what I also want to say, yes, that's amazing what you have said, because, you know, I also figured out, you know, in the moment a child is taken away from the parent, they got traumatized. You know, also the function to remember is damaged at that time as well. So, and, you know, just in my case, they placed, you know, my children into a crisis intervention center where they completely separated, isolated them, and, you know, and started, you know, to indoctrinate and manipulated them, and to prepare them to give, you know, for example, to the abusive parents, or, you know, to other foster families. So this is a common topic, or what they are doing, especially with children. Separation for several months, reprogramming them and putting them, you know, into children homes or foster families. So I just wanted to collaborate, you know, a little bit on this. But my interest is also, you know, to see if you have any information, you know, in regard to, did you ever heard anything, you know, of the SOS Children Villages, you know, in Costa Rica? Do you have something more, you know, to share, you know, about adoption, or, you know, also foster families and all those kind of things? Because what I also want to add, you know, there are also a lot of cases, you know, especially in the US, where children been taken from their parents, you know, put in foster families and are tortured and died, you know, in the care of foster families as well. So there's also a lot, you know, in regards to this topic as well. So I'm just out of curiosity, because you have 2 villages there, right, in Costa Rica, if you heard anything, or if you can collaborate, you know, more on those topics.
Yeah, I actually saw the map that Rick sent me of the SOS villages, and my town that I used to live in called Orotina, which in Spanish, oro is gold, and tina, Orotina, tin of gold, in San Mateo, St. Matthew. But it was like interesting when I looked on the map, I was like, wow, if there were tunnels, they would be just like that, you know, like they were just so subsequent. I don't know anything too specific, except that I know that when they were having a rally to initiate this new community called La Ecovia 2, they were raising money for their orphanage. And I remember I was supposed to go to that event and I fell sick. I literally just started throwing up. And this happens sometimes also when I meet someone that has certain things going on. Usually when they leave my presence, it's like I have to clean that. And so I always felt back then I was still just putting some things together. I couldn't be for sure what was going on. I don't want to make assumptions, you know, but no, I met this friend, Gail. She worked for the foster community for 20 years in the United States. And she said it is just absolutely horrid and disgusting, these games that they are playing and what they are actually doing there and what they're allowing and overlooking, and these innocent children just being passed around like they are. And there's nothing, and people think MK Ultra was a program in the 70s when it's still going on all day, every day. And so mind control is such a big part of this game. And I know that as we come out and start to talk about these things, and that's what, you know, I thought I was just going to run away and hide in the mountain and keep my daughter safe. But I'm starting to realize, what about for the ones to come? That's what we're here for. That's what we came here for, because they have a right to land on the earth again. These are actually masters from other universes that want to come down to earth again, and it has not been safe because it's been invaded. And so until this is truly rectified, that means there has to be some kind of coming to Jesus of crimes against humanity, the full cosmic disclosure of these games. I mean, there's almost, everyone's in on it. That's the sick part. There are, even when you think it's a society that's going to be like totally fine, someone is in on it there. And those games that are being played. So these are supposedly trusted authorities and groups that are supposedly protecting children. And that leads me to another thing. You know, when that movie Sound of Freedom came out, I don't know if you guys ever heard of it, but it was a movie to bring awareness around child trafficking. It was big in the US and they televised it on 4th of July last year in all the theaters. Well, and it was created by a guy who was ex-military, lived from the Mormon Church, Provo, Utah. And a lot of things started to come out about the idea. See, sometimes the ones that come in like they're disclosing the information are the ones that are actually doing it, just like they do with these controlled opposition games. So because the time is up and there is a force of required transparency, there's no better way to make it look like you're not the one doing it than to pretend like you're the one solving the problem. And so that was an interesting thing for me, because there was another guy I saw interviewed on Todd Medina's show one time, and I met a girl here in the mountain that worked for him. And I realized that he was the angel investor for Sound of Freedom. And I was like starting to get suspicious. I was like, maybe the ones that are acting like they're solving the problem are the ones really doing it. And so, of course, this is my scorpionic, suspicious ways of working with things. But there are so many people involved in this. And the thing that I still just have to say something so important. We can take this to the ET level, and we can take this to the demon level, and we can take this to the parasite entity level. The only way we actually solve this problem is about bringing it out in the light, talking about it, and honestly extracting demons. And I'm not kidding about that. And I've been in an experience where I was called to cast something out of someone, and it wasn't pretty. And it was a dark spine, black looking dragon entity that was wrapped around the person's spine. And so this thing is in many people, and it's feeding off of them, and it's operating their vehicle. This has to do with the story of the fallen angels, which were not meant to come to the earth again. And they found new ways to use a body, to get into a body. And AI is another one of those ways to take over the soul, to inhabit a body that could have been born a certain name and could have had this or that. But ultimately, it's a being that has no heart and is operating through a vehicle that's been given up to it, usually through abuse, alcohol, drugs, And so I can't say that I know anything specific about the SOS. I am suspicious of anyone that's talking about orphans. We have a big Israeli community here, and they're always talking about bringing the people that have just, like, refugees from the war over here. And then they're talking about starting these Waldorf schools. And like, I pretty much have suspicions with anyone that's talking about starting schools. I always find it fascinating when I'm meeting people that don't even have kids and they want to start a school. And it's like, there's always someone running around looking to start another school and gather all the kids together. And so I can't even, I mean, honestly, all these school systems, there's a lot of news coming out right now in Texas, where I'm from, about like, you know, this transgender teacher was taking pics of the kids, or this or that, all of these different things coming out. And I'm like, who else do you think's working there? Who else is working at these places? These people are coming in to work directly frontline with children all day, every day, while you're at work trying to make a buck to pay the bills. And so there's nowhere that it isn't. And that's the shocking part, is when you start talking about this stuff, we need to prepare ourselves for what is to come, for the very people that we're close to and we know that are hiding these things within themselves as well. So it's easier to look at it from an Epstein level, but it's in everyone's home. And I have a proposal about this. You know, I started studying the idea of Tartaria, if anybody knows about it, this idea of a previous civilization, highly advanced in nature, didn't have bathrooms, used bell and sound cleaning and healing technologies, light beings, basically, of the eternal light. And I think it wasn't so long ago. Our memories have been wiped and we don't really understand who we are and where we come from. And linear time is a big part of the Archon's deception. Even you know, supposedly we're in year 2025 AD, right? Which is after death of Christ. Somehow we've all been invited into this timeline, whether you believe in the idea of a Christ or not, but specifically after Christ's death, 2025 years. But also AD stands for Archon deception. So anyways, it's all about this linear time thing. So my proposal here, and I just want to go into an imagination theory, because I've been trying to figure out the root of why this exists. Because you could go after one or the other, or one organization, but I need to get to the root of why a human being wants to do something like that. Why a 13-year-old child wants to do those things to people, for an example, right? And it's led me to this entity parasite, like a different understanding of the psychic plane and the psychic field and the fracture of the soul and the mind control, but also the root that they had to have had some trauma, whether they recall it or not. And so what was I going to say about that? Oh, let's just have some fun and imagine that before 4 generations ago, because none of us probably met our great-great-grandparents, right? And so I want you to imagine that there was a complete reset of the Americas. Supposedly, you know, they say it was just a bunch of free land and all these Christopher Columbus stories. None of that shit's true anyways. Christopher Columbus is an alien invasion story, period. But the point is, let's just imagine that our Earth was reset, or let's say the Americas was the original Atlantis with high advanced civilizations not so long ago. So let's say there was a mud flood and it wiped everything out. This is just a hypothetical story. I mean, we're living in a hologram. It's all hypothetical. But I want you to imagine this to be so. Pretty much for all of us, 4 generations ago, our family members came through some land from some other land and had a farm or got a little land. And then all of a sudden you've got, you know, like my grandmother, she was over the border in Canada, right by Maine, potato farmers. And then they crossed over the border. There was sexual in all of that generation. First of all, the children weren't even always their children. A lot of these were, go look up the orphan repopulation. If you haven't heard of the orphan trains and orphan repopulation, it'll blow your freaking mind. And the whole idea of Ellis Island, my mom's last name, her maiden name is Ellis. That's a whole new story of the Statue of Liberty in Ellis Island, that they just took a bunch of refugees from wars and just pushed them over to the United States with all the mixed bloodlines. And now everybody's got their next settlers to build their farms, to build their land. And not only are they farm slaves, but they're also sex slaves. And so this started a long time ago, and it's happened forever and ever. And it takes someone really strong to be able to break that line. And so I've always felt a level of protection that I didn't go through that I can recall in my lifetime. But I have had too many people now come to me. And I always said, when I started to awaken, it was like all of a sudden, all these people came to me like, I want to commit suicide. I want to, you know, my father raped me, or like all these stories. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't want anyone coming to me with that stuff. I just want to talk about heaven over here. And it was like, no, you got to know what's going on in the humanity right now. You got to face this thing. And so we have a bigger pandemic on our hands than we really understand. I mean, I have a friend who came from Canada, and she told me every one of her brothers did something to her. And then I want to tell you guys this other story. I went to this place here called Earth Waking Village, and I'll leave you at this because there's still a big question mark on this. And I want to be careful that I'm not defaming anything, because I can't say for sure. You get to have your own clues about it. But I went to this place called Earth Waking Village, and it was about a remember event. It was, when I looked on the website, it said it was about remembering the Divine Mother, Divine Father, and Divine Child. And so I go to this event. They were supposedly $1,000 a ticket, but they gave us a scholarship because I said, what do you do for people on the Christed path that walk with just the bags they own and no money? And they allowed us to come. So as soon as I walk into this place, I hear, this is some MK Ultra shit. And right away, you know, it's kind of interesting. It's like they were doing this series, they talking about the return of the Christ and different things like this. So, and they're talking about the Babylon and apocalypse. So it's all these words. And, but then they did this series on what's the most fucked up thing you've ever done. And then the next thing you know, people are getting up there and, you know, they're having sex with animals. They're having sex with children. One of them had sex with their mother. And then the guy's almost like a stand-up comedian, like, oh, you're a motherfucker. It was like so weird. It was like they wanted to know the trauma, but then they wanted to like manipulate and turn around on them. And it was so disgusting. And then they were saying Mary Magdalene was a whore. It was just, the whole thing was fucked up. But the point is, on the last day when I left there, I found this piece of paper folded under a lamp. It was a phoenix bird lamp with a Russian prayer flag with gold and cherubim angels. And I find this piece of paper and I take it home with me because I want to do some research on it. It was just folded up, you know, like under the lamp. And I go and I look up the name. The order is for a shipping container on 11/11 last year. And it's actually connected to Canada, which I've heard so many stories out of Canada. It's just crazy. And not to mention all of the buried children at churches. Let's be honest about it. This shit's been going on forever. We're just getting to the bottom of it. This is the real thing we've got to face. There isn't anywhere that it is not. They're making it all Hollywood looking, but it's happening everywhere, all around us, all the time. And the people want to be free from this. I'm certain of it. But anyways, there was a name on there on that receipt for the shipping container. And of course, where did my mind go? We know what shipping containers have been used for in moving children around. But again, I'm making an assumption. It's not like it says the contents of the details on the thing. But when I look up the particular name, he feels like he fits the bill of some suspicions that I would have about that particular topic. And he was a part of a controlled opposition that took place at the truckers convoy in Canada. And other things popped up specifically about him. And so this is what I found. There isn't anywhere it is not. And this is what we need to be real about. And until we can really unfold the real reasons why people are doing these things, because I wanted to take down this, take down that, go after him, go after her, go after this, go after that. But I'm like, wow, these souls are hurt. These souls have actually been fully taken over. Why are they doing this? And so these are the answers that I have, is that there are many people that we know that are suffering with these things. They certainly don't feel safe to tell anybody about it. And until we can digest this information, because this is what I'm learning, you can't bring heaven down here until this is cleaned up. I already tried. And this is what heaven told me. You got to go to the drain. You got to go to the gunky shit in the sink. You got to get the clogged up hair out of there. You got to make room for this holy water to come flow through. And this is the bottleneck that we've got to go into. And so the rapture, the true rapture, according to Gene Key 30, is part of the gate of purification, the 13 and the 30. The 30 is about the purification of the lower astral body. And so what I believe that we're being prepared for right now is a planetary rapture. And it is the purification of the lower astral body, which is where these implants are that are really driving these humans' bodies like vehicles, like bulldozers. They're operating a physical vessel almost against its will. So until we understand it from that level and we can hold that field of compassion and grace to really handle what it is that we're dealing with and what we're looking at here, that's the healing of our earth. That's the healing of the planet. And that's what I believe is the timeline that we're coming into next. Because I thought for sure I would have already flown away in my Merkaba by now. I thought for fucking sure I would have fucking flew away in a Merkaba, rainbow light body. I'm fucking on it. I'm aligned. I'm a heavenly divine angel. And nope, you got to get down here with your shovel and you got to get into this thing. And we want to end this, and they want to end it too. And I know that. I know that these people are feeling like prisoners, all of them, the perpetrators and the victims. Everybody wants to end this game, and this is all connected to the Dead Sea Scrolls. You know, last year or 2 years ago on October 6th, I went and I heard, go look up the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so I go and I look it up, and I find specifically a war scroll, Qumran War Scroll #1. And the whole story of the Dead Sea Scrolls, if nobody knows about it, I have a YouTube video about it, but it's actually about the idea these kids were running around throwing these rocks in caves, and they heard something break, and they go in and they find these broken jars with these scrolls inside them, some of them on rolled up copper. But the Qumran War Scroll #1 talks about a final battle of the light and the dark, led by the angels of light and Archangel Michael, and the angels of dark, led by Belial. And that the final battle of the light and the dark has come, and that we know that the light wins in the end, but the battle must take place on the stage. And so supposedly this was a record kept by the Essenes, which were groups of many Christed beings before the whole idea of one Christ, actually, 300 years before the Christ came into the form, or the story of the Christ came into the form. And so as I went to bed that night, I woke up the next day, and that was when Israel and Palestine Russia and Ukraine's a different one. Israel and Palestine bombing had taken place. Literally, that was taking place as I was reading the final battle of light and dark of the Dead Sea Scrolls. So I knew we were in it. And I knew that no matter what comes, that I just have to stay solid and at peace, because there's no fear that the light wins. And we have to embrace the dark. There's something I thought I was going to slay a dragon. I thought I was going to kick someone's ass. I thought I was going to kill somebody. Nope. I got to love these beasts, because actually there's an innocent human in there that's ready to be freed again. It's about freeing many, many souls that have been trapped in the underworld for a significant amount of time. And so what I imagine and I trust is that there are many beings on this earth who also incarnated in the dark side for the light, and have done things that are not so acceptable to what we would accept in moral conduct, that are going to be the willing ones that are going to come forward, that have been a part of these things, that are going to share the truth with us, so that we can understand how to navigate this mass awakening on a responsible level, and really walk humanity through a mass healing of the truth of what's been going on. And I feel like it just takes a few to come forward and admit these things, so we can understand how they work a little deeper, so that we can really clean this up and not keep looking away.
Oh, we're breaking that all down now, so it's in full flow, and we're right on the cusp of it. We're getting quite lengthy in here, but Sister Nya, yeah, I kind of interrupted. You had the floor. Was there any more questions? And we'll, I believe, keep this a little bit short because we've been quite a while here.
No, I
Yeah.
think it's fine. Thank you.
We could talk for days, as we know, Sister Alicia and Sister Nya. And yeah, it's been a great talk, and I enjoyed sitting back, listening, with us, and identifying with a lot of it, if you will. Yes.
Yeah,
And
it's so great to know you all. Thank you for the work you're doing, and on much honor, reverence, and deep gratitude for all of our soul family that's on the front lines of this mission and walking through the dark, holding the light, and being the pillars of truth wherever we go, and having the power to use our voice and to never have any fear and know that we're divinely protected and that we
excellent.
chose this role for ourselves. And there's no time like now to shine as the warrior of lights. I always say Mary's army of light, 144,000. You know, Mary and army are the same letters. So yeah, it's time to unite the light back together and celebrate.
Was that sage that you lit there a while ago? And does that
Oh,
go
no.
natural there?
This is eucalyptus. It is my most favorite thing to burn,
Oh,
actually. I love sage too, but eucalyptus is my favorite.
Wow.
oh, that's what you were burning there, was it? Yeah.
Yeah, I was burning it. I love it. It's got a nice oil to it, so it gets a good flame.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, excellent. Yeah. Hmm. Well, with this, if there isn't anything else, then we'll close this up, I believe. Everyone good with that? And what we'll
Yeah.
do is I'll close it up on Facebook and we can stay on here for a few moments if you wish after. So with this, everyone watching, thank you so much for watching. And there's always a rhyme and a reason for everything that we do, and it sets the energetic stages for things to come. And we are in this great time of unity and connection, and this brings more information to the light, to the surface, and it's all part of the process. And I'm so grateful that Sister Alicia and River and Eduardo brother joined us here today. And Sister Alicia wanted a sunny day. It was raining there earlier, I believe, but she manifested it, and we had a excellent connection. And so just absolutely grateful. So with this, love, light, and gratitude to everyone. And we will stop the recording when I figure it out. All right, there we go. All right.